Like if I say to you, I don't like how you're talking to me, and you have a big reaction. For me, that's one of the, I call the litmus tests of self. Like, how are people reacting to me? Not just am I courageous, am I compassionate, curious, do I have an agenda? But this, I've learned this whole other piece of like, how are people responding? If people are responding to me in a way that's in line with what I thought I would, the response I would get, let me just check. And 99% of the time, I find, wow, that was a part of me who really felt he was right.
Hey everyone, I'm Tammy Sollenberger, the author of The One Inside 30 Days to Your Authentic Self. This podcast is for anyone curious about who they are, the different parts of themselves, and for those who want to connect with their true self. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
I am so excited to bringing back to the podcast Seth Kopald, who is a certified level 3 IFS practitioner. He has a PhD in organized management with a specialization in leadership and master's in education. His specialties include self-led parenting, parts art, spirituality, and creating spaces where people's parts feel safe and understood. I don't know why I just read your bio, but I just did. And this is your third time on the podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, technically third time. The first time we recorded two, so this will be the fourth actual podcast. But yeah, it's my third time sitting with you.
That's right. Well, you know what? Because when I started the podcast, I only wanted to do them in half-hour blocks because I was like, let's make them short and sweet, and
Mm.
that never really worked. So we ended up doing 2 half-hour. So we did an hour. So you must have been really early on then.
Yeah, we were doing it around parenting, but then it slipped into organizational management type stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And then you and I have done a bunch of stuff together. Remember when we did the parenting thing on Clubhouse? Clubhouse is an app that's
Yeah.
just audio only. And so we like tried to get this IFS room on Clubhouse, and we
Yeah.
did a couple things with that. We had Dick on Clubhouse once.
Yeah.
And I just want to go down memory lane with you
Yeah.
before
We
we
also
go
did a
ahead.
session at a conference 2 years ago. We did a parenting, you and Leslie and I.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the best thing about that was we had to meet, right? So we met probably like 6 times. So it was just so fun to meet with each other. And you and Leslie are just like just really fun people.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I am so excited today because you have a book coming out.
Hmm.
Tell me how you're feeling about this book coming out.
I'm really excited for one. It's been years and years in the making. It's probably been, I should probably look back, but I believe it's around 3 years. And it doesn't mean 3 years of writing, but 3 years of stopping and starting and stopping and starting, working with different people, like friends who were coaching me. And then what finally helped was getting an editor who was turned out to be like a writing coach. Not so much in the process of writing, but keeping me going,
Yeah.
keeping me and pushing me.
Yeah.
And I definitely had a lot of parts that would just pause. Um, and I've realized there's a lot of parts that really like process and doesn't like things to end. Um, but they are on board now, and they
I think with
um,
anything creative, like you could just keep messing with it. Like you could just keep rewriting and editing, and like that could never end. You could just keep doing it.
that's right. Yeah, and um, for me, it was parenting is one of my specialties in my PhD in organization management. Um, but as I was writing the book, I started with the parenting chapter. And then as I was thinking, like, what else do I want to say? What do I want to do? It really became clear that, being with our parts in all these different areas of our life is so important. So I've done the IFS, IFIO training. So being with our parts in intimate relationships, and of course at work, um, while parenting. And then we've done that spirituality podcast. So I have a big interest on how do we be with our parts while we're engaged in spiritual practices. And I really wanted something that folks could use in between sessions. So like this book is really about how to be in relationship with your parts.
I love it. So, you just posted something on Instagram. So I'm not sure when this will be released, but you just posted something on Instagram. It's got the cover of the book, which is beautiful. It's this beautiful yellow cover, and the title of the book is Self-Led.
Right.
So tell me about the title and how you came up with the title.
Okay. Um, so for me, I was playing with different titles all along, like living a self-led life. It just felt very cumbersome in the mouth, I guess to say. And one day it just hit me like what this book is about is becoming self-led. And so like it was almost like shown to me
Mm-hmm.
self-led. And I was actually sharing this with Dick because he read the book and offered things, and I told him the title, and he's like, "Are you just going to call it self-led? Is that it? Like stop, self-led, stop?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll probably add like a subheading, so I do have a a subtitle, but the way the book is designed is so when people see it, that's what they see is self-led." And I want to, before I forget, thank my wife, who's a graphic designer. So I had a vision of the book and how I want it to feel. Yep, that's the one. And you just showed it to me. And she really captured the vision perfectly. Like I really want the yellow for me is like the color of a lot of people when they see self energy, like there's like this golden yellowy light. So I wanted that to be there. And then even like how the book is, how the technical term is copy, the writing is how it's in the book is going to be the way it's designed is so it feels spacious. Like a lot of books I read, it's so dense with words, and the pages are so might be thin or really shiny, and it just feels like everything is crammed. And what I wanted the reader to have, like almost like a sensorial experience of like wanting to hold the book, wanting to, um, feel spacious as they read the book. And the chapters aren't that long. I'm a slow reader, and I read the book usually every time I read it from cover to back. It's like 2 days of reading for me. Um, so yeah, and the dragonfly on the front, that happened one day. I was going around the side of the house. I think I was checking the air conditioner or something like that. And on one of the plants, there was a humongous green dragonfly. I've never seen one this big. And when I saw it, I had like a kind of a feeling like, wow, there's something special here. And I sat with it, and it just felt like it had like guide energy. Like this feels like it's here to tell me something. So as I listened, I heard some things, like some guidance around, um, sometimes my dad might say white man parts can offer unsolicited advice to my kids and to other people. And the dragonfly, I felt like it was telling me that needs to stop. Like we really need to reach your next level in relationships with people. It's time to pause when you feel that, because I have a helping part that wants to share, and I realize that helping part really wants love and affection back, thinks if I help people, I'll have connection, but usually it creates the opposite effect, as what happens oftentimes when our parts are taking the lead. And then I went for a drive and did some errands. And then when I came home, I think I don't know if it was a part or something in me said, if that was really a guide, it'll still be there, like almost like a test. And I walked around the house and poof, it was right there. It was just still sitting there on the leaf. And then not too long after that, I thought that needs to be the cover.
Beautiful. It's beautiful, and it looks like there's sort of blue or green sort of splattered around it. That's not the right
Mm-hmm.
word, but
Yeah, like my wife calls it remnants.
yeah, remnants. It's beautiful. And you didn't tell us. So it says self-led.
Mm-hmm.
Cover is just beautiful. So I just saw the cover about an hour ago. So that's why I'm sort of like, wow, this is so pretty. And then I love, the self-led is really big. And then there's this beautiful dragonfly. And then it says living a connected life with yourself and with others, an application of internal family systems.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think every chapter, so the way the book is set up, I talk about there's an introduction, like what is IFS, what are parts, what is self, there's a chapter. And then I wrote a pretty long chapter on how to be with your parts in lots of different ways, and how do you connect with your parts, how do you listen to them, even how do you be with certain types of parts that might show up that could be challenging sometimes. And then I really devoted a chapter to each of those areas. So there's a chapter on intimate relationships, a chapter at work, chapter for parenting, a chapter for spirituality, then like a final wrap up. And
Right.
if while you read through it, I think one of my major goals is that same, like that twofold piece of like, how do I be in relationship with my parts, and how do I do that? How do I be in relationship with the people around me? So at work, how do if I want things to go smoothly, if I want people to collaborate with me, and I want not to have conflicts with my boss, like, it's not just how do I be with my parts, but how do I then speak for my parts? Or how do I pause when somebody says something and I'm activated and really see what happens inside? And how do I then respond as opposed to react in a way that builds relationships with all these people in our lives? So for me, it's really both things.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that, right? It's working, what I'm hearing you say is working with my internal system. At the same time, I'm working with my internal family and my external family, whether that's
Mm-hmm.
my partner or coworkers or family members.
Right.
So I want to read the book overview that you sent me, because when I read it, I thought this is like the goal of all of our lives. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not to be super dramatic, but I was like, wow, this feels like maybe I was for myself. Like when I read it, I was like, this feels like my goal for my life, like my
Okay.
entire life. So this is what it says. Self-Led, the book, walks you through the building of authentic relationships with yourself and with others. While reading Self-Led, you will gain a thorough understanding of what internal family systems refers to as yourself and your parts. You will learn how to form relationships with your parts by listening and understanding them. You will also learn how to be self-led in some of the most important aspects of your life, in intimate relationships, at work, while parenting, and in your own spirituality. By becoming self-led, you will live a more harmonious life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's it. I mean, I feel like that's what I want, right? I want to be self-led in every area of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
So I'm
It's
going to read
funny.
your book and I'm going to be able to do
Okay.
it.
And it's funny because my parts will call me out when I'm not doing what I write about in my book. So I have parts that are very much like, don't want me to be an imposter, don't want me to be one of those people that like just say it. And it doesn't mean I'm perfect. I have parts who get activated. There's times I'm fully blended, but I think like even like the parenting chapter, one reason why this book took so long is because I had parts who said, you don't get to write this chapter until you've worked with some of these parts where the relationships with my kids are at this other level they're hoping for.
Wow. Okay.
There was like some, like, not a lot, like some rubs here and there or whatever. And working with my own IFS therapist, I was able to clear that out. Um, and, the relationships got easier and smoother. And then my parts were like, okay, now you can write it.
And the clearing out, my guess is the clearing out happened with your own system
That's right.
first. It wasn't like, I'm going to go make those relationships better. Okay.
No, like for instance, like parenting in general, one of my latest passions is noticing that anytime our children are having a negative reaction towards us, um, there are times it might just be something's happening with them, but I find most of the time for me, if I pause and look within and do a U-turn and say, who just said whatever I just said, I notice it's oftentimes a part as opposed to me being self-led. So I've also, for instance, it might give advice, it might tell what we need to do next. And if a part's talking, it means it has some kind of agenda for me. Like it's really saying it for me, not for them. Right? Because the part
Yeah.
wants this to go smoothly so I can have peace. The part wants my child to go to school and get there so I could be a good father. It's not really thinking about the child. And then what I noticed was, because these parts are saying, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, it's really saying it's not okay to be you right here. You need to be over here to be lovable, to be accepted. And any type of correction, any type of direction coming from when we're blended often will land, I think, as shame. Like, you're
Right.
not good enough as is. You need to be this. You need to be quicker. Why aren't you doing your homework? So when we lead with something like that, their parts will react and push us away, roll their eyes, slam their door. And we're like, what's wrong with you? So I came up with this new analogy that, we as parents are, and our children are the boat, like a tiny little boat. And oftentimes our systems are going all over the place and we're upset with the boat because they won't calm down. And as we calm ourselves down, then the boat can actually right itself and then actually choose to go in a direction instead of being tossed here and there. And so what I realized with the relationship stuff I was having with my kids, that when I was able to work with my parts, unburden, and a lot of times just don't talk when I'm feeling blended, their parts relax and relax and relaxed, and then my parts got what they wanted, which was like this loving relationship, even more compliance, like, oh, dad, sure, I'll help with that. So that's one example of how doing the work with ourselves, helps our children's, so their parts can relax.
I
And
love that.
anytime we're talking to people from a part, we know that we're going to get a part back.
Right. Right. And yeah, I wonder, why it feels like it feels different for my kid, right? Like I could say, do this, do that, knowing that if I'm talking from a part, I still expect him to listen and obey and do what I'm asking him to do. But I wouldn't expect that if I was talking from a part to you or to a friend of mine.
Right. Yeah, I honestly think that somewhere it might be legacy material, that we somehow have this belief that if we could actually biologically create a human, that we are like the king or the queen and we get to have total rule and say what we want, and they're supposed to disobey. And what I find is, like, when we look at them as a human with a system of parts, that their parts are going to react to dominance, to criticism, and it's just impossible for them. We're almost asking them to be in self when we're not. Like, you must be like, yes, that sounds wonderful, I see through you're having a bad day, you're yelling at me, but because you're my mom, I'm going to do what you say. Like, that would take somebody who's done, years and years of IFS work with their own
Right.
parts to be able to.
I think there's a parts of me that expect my son to settle the boat. And oftentimes he does, right? Like he reads me really well. And I could be like, right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna whatever's happening with me. And then he will settle the boat. And I'm sitting here thinking about, like, wow, how many times has my system relied on him to settle the boat?
Right.
It doesn't feel super good, but
Yeah.
good trailhead.
There is that thing of co-regulation, and I think it is possible for children to do that. But then I can hear you say there's something about it you don't like. It makes me curious, if those children feel like it's their responsibility to take care of us, and then their parts are doing that for them, right? Because if mom could be calm, then I could be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Mom will
And
stop annoying me. Calm her down so that I can have a good night.
right. So it is true. They can do that, but in general, I feel like if we hold that belief that we are this ocean, that it gives me a perspective to say, before I used to have a part that would really get upset with my kids if they were really out of sorts and yelling or upset, because it would dysregulate me. And I would be trying to force them to calm down so I could be regulated. And it never worked.
Yeah.
I
That
found
makes
if I
sense.
can go away and find some regulation and come back, that then they can.
Yeah. I also like the don't talk, just stop talking, right? Like if
Mhm.
I can just stop talking, that probably would be good.
Yeah. And I think, so one thing that's like I talk about a lot in this book is just noticing the body. So whether, we're talking a lot here about parenting, but say at work, right? Say my coworker says something to me that really bothers me. For me, I'll find like when I feel my legs moving really quickly towards a person, I know I need to pause because I'm blended with a part that's about to say something like firm and probably going to backfire. So we start to notice in our bodies like, wow, when I'm walking towards my kid's room, when I'm walking towards this person's office, when I'm stomp, 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 I better pause. And who knows what I'm going to do? At least I won't have to recover from that incident and have to do a repair and have to make up for it. Because this part in my legs who carries me there has so justified. Like he thinks I'm in the right to just blow this up right now.
That's gonna actually feel really good for like 30 seconds.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
blow this up.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk about the importance of parts feeling deeply understood. And I love this term with what you call exquisite attunement.
Mm.
Tell me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's a term I've just come up with recently, mostly because I think I need that because I didn't get it when I was a kid. Um, so what I'm finding is there's a simple practice that I've been doing with my parts and helping my clients do is so what does it mean to be understood? Right? It means the other person or self not only says I get it, but can actually say back to you what I get.
Mm.
So it's like mirroring, and I know a lot of other models use this. In IFS, we often say, does that make sense to you? Let the part know it makes sense. But if I say to you, that makes sense, like how much do you really know I get it? So just for instance, a simple practice of saying, what I'm hearing is you're feeling this and that and this, and when that happened, it made you feel this way. And you're showing me that's connected to all these other things. Am I getting it right? And what I find is these parts like soften to a deeper level of relaxation, especially parts who are angry and just need to yell and scream or cross their arms and furrow their brow. That when we reply that way and let them know what we're understanding, all of a sudden I don't have to be so loud. I don't have to be so firm. I can relax a little bit because finally somebody understands.
So it's self saying to the part, not just I get it, but saying, oh buddy, like I'm hearing blank, 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 blank.
Yeah.
Like I'm really hearing these things. And so
Good.
it helps parts feel like, so it could be protective parts, it could be
Right.
protectors or exiles
Right.
could really feel that self not only is like, yes, I'm getting that, but like with the reflecting it back specifically, there's a deeper connection and deeper attunement.
Right. And as you
Exquisite
yeah,
attunement, actually.
exquisite attunement. And so exquisite attunement, and I think you know this as a therapist, that it's not just cognitively I understand. So there's also like an art and an essence to this that I'm somehow conveying to you that I can feel, I can sense it. So it's in my voice, it's in my body language, that I'm not just saying, oh, you're telling me blank, blank, blank. I'm saying, oh, I can feel, I can sense, I understand you're feeling this way, this way. Oh yeah, I get it. So it's something about that might be unspoken, but there's a sensing here too of like how we are in our body, how we are in our energy with our kids or with our coworkers or with our parts, that makes us feel safe.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is like I talk about Erickson's work a little bit in the parenting chapter, but I always go back to this whole, first stage of life of trust versus mistrust. Like, do we trust the world or do we not trust the world? And trusting the world comes from, according to Erickson, when adults around an infant or toddler sense their needs and respond to their needs. then they don't have to get into distress. They don't have to numb out. Like you probably have seen many clients who, when they finally found an infant, the infant needs to be held and attuned to. And I think that all of our parts need that. And you might say all of our parts somehow carry our needs of an infant. Because my 11-year-old, my 12-year-old had parts. And that part, the 12-year-old probably had that infant part that needed attunement. So all of our parts need attunement, which creates a basic safety in the world. It means I can trust that I'll be okay. I can trust the world, which means that I can trust myself to do things. I can now take initiative. I can be autonomous. I can try new things. And I personally believe it all comes from, having that sense of attunement, understanding with our parts and with our kids. Like for me, I do have an infant part that I work with a lot, that when I feel anxiety, like if something happens and I get really shaky, that type of anxiety where you're like, oh my gosh, this is like a full body experience. I know enough now that it's that infant, because infants have like that full body sensorial kind of feeling when something happens, right? And then when I literally like feel like I hold this infant on my chest and I breathe with it, and I'm like, I feel you, I sense you, and I'm attuning almost like vibrationally, and then all of that anxiety in me just kind of settles down. And it's usually that's all it needs. It just needs to be attuned to, like somebody's there. So.
Yeah, I feel that. And for me, the words wouldn't matter as much as that like felt sense attunement, right? Like the feeling of, right, like that baby on your chest, heart to heart beating together. Like that for my system means so much more than words actually.
Right.
And because then it really is sort of like they know I'm getting it because they can feel that within me. I think probably everyone's going to be a little bit different. And maybe even every part's going to be different in what they need or like how old they are.
Yeah, of course. And that's the beauty of attunement, is that when I attune to you, say you're the part, it means I don't have a preconceived notion of what you need. Is I'm attuning to you, so you're sharing with me your need.
Yeah, I love
So
that.
for my baby,
Right.
for that infant, it needs to simply be held in heart to heart.
Yeah.
Whereas if I attune to a different part, it'll show me what it needs. So you're right. Thank you for saying that. So I don't want everyone to think all you do is hold a baby and then everything's fine. But I
There
do
is
find,
something about holding a baby that feels really good, but
yeah.
also can be really stressful, right? Like, yeah. What about this? I love this. Being with our parts in a way that allows us to be self-led in all aspects of life. I'm not just self-led 1 hour a week when I'm in therapy, or for therapists or practitioners, I'm only self-led when I'm seeing a client, but otherwise, no. Or only, when I'm with my partner, but not parenting, or not when I'm with my ex, or not when I'm with my mom, or there's all these different aspects of life where it's a little bit harder to be self-led.
Right. Yes. I do like to think of it as like playing an instrument or like learning a dance, or that it's really practice. And we're not going to get it right all the time, but the more we do it, it becomes like a new normal. And I do feel like we create like new neural pathways around what's my instant response? Where in the past, my instant response was very different than it is now. I still am trying to tweak my instant response, that I'm more self-led. But I think it's as we focus on each area, we'll realize there's some areas that are harder. I think for a lot of people, for like instance, parenting and intimate relationships are really hard because our partners and our kids can push our parts buttons really easily. And these are the people that are supposed to love us the most. So when they're upset with us, it's, at least I can speak for myself, it's way more dire than if somebody else is upset with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then people will have different feelings about that. So,
I love what you're saying about the instant response, though, right? Just noticing what's my instant response, because that's going to be my parts. And then I can turn towards those parts so that I can really get to know them. So that then when I have another interaction with
right,
person A, then I can be aware. So that instant response actually gives me a trailhead, or gives me sort of a cue. Oh, here's some parts here.
that's right. Yeah, and it's almost like noticing that space between the stimulus of what somebody says or does to then what do I actually do.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we're not with our parts, it's a reaction. And when we pause in that space and, hey, who's here? Hang on, hang on. And I love how like Dick will often say, like, before a presentation, he'll say to his parts, can you just give me a shot? And I found something like that helps me a lot. I'll just say to my parts, can you just let me do this? Is it okay to give me space and let me respond? Like and I might, sometimes we don't have a lot of time, but then they're watching as I interact with the person and respond as opposed to react. And a lot of times I'll look back at my parts and say like, well, how'd I do? Because I know what they want. They want this to go smoothly. They want the person to like us. They want the person to agree with us or be agreeable, not necessarily agree, but like not be in conflict. So I think that, yeah, within that space, there's, where it's almost like we're slowing down time if we can.
That I also love the going back to the parts and saying, well, how did I do?
Yeah. I learned that with parenting because they're like, we're just going to stomp in the room, right? We're going to stomp, we're going to say it, and he's going to do it, or she's going to do it. And I'm like, okay, you want that to happen, but it's okay if I handle it. And then we talk and we do the thing, and then they do the thing that my parts wanted them to do. Then I look over and I'm like, well, how'd I do? And they'll usually like give me like the, like the thumbs up or like the pointed, like the wink and the pointed fingers. And they're
Good
like, yeah,
job.
good job. and
I
and
love
so
that. I think that's how we become more self-led, right? Is that
right.
we're like this building this relationship with our parts, right? The one that wants to go stomp in, like, all right, buddy, hold on a second, let me try. I'm going to go in. Then of course I'm going to have to turn towards, or I want to turn towards that one that wants to stomp and say, how did I do? And how are you doing now?
Mm-hmm. And I think that builds trust. So they let you lead quicker and quicker and quicker. So then I think that's why I wanted to call this book Self-Led, because that kind of work with our parts hopefully leads us to that as
Yeah.
much as possible.
Well, you know what? It really is said it covers everything, right? Like if I want to lose weight, or I want to start an exercise program, if I want to be more financially independent, if I want to be a better parent, like sort of think about if I want to meditate more, if I like for the things, if I think about in my like list of life things, I often will be like, okay, well, you could do a program or you could just work with your parts. Like, okay, well, I'll work with my parts, right? It's sort of, it always comes back to that. Like, okay, if I want to do blank, I can try to do some behavior changes, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I almost always these days say, or you can work with your parts, because I know that's what's going to get me. Maybe it doesn't get me the thing, like maybe it doesn't get me the weight loss or the
Right.
financial, but it gets me what I want, which is to be more self-led.
Right. And if it'll probably allow us to participate in those programs fully.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that.
Well, what's coming to mind quickly is just like even like with medication, like if my parts aren't agreeable to me taking this medication, sometimes the medication won't be as effective. And so if I join a gym, maybe it's like one manager part of me that says, we're joining a gym, but we haven't talked to the rest of the parts. And they're like, I don't really want to. And it's not something I really want to do. And I feel self-conscious there or whatever they feel. But if I can be with my parts and say, hey, for our health, I would like to do this, but let's talk.
Yeah,
What
I
would you,
love
what do
that.
you think? How do you feel? How would you need me to be there with you if you felt embarrassed? How would you need me to help you, if you're feeling tired and you don't want to go? Like maybe you can stay home and I can go. And so as we negotiate with our parts, then if we actually want to go to the gym, well, I personally think there's a higher likelihood to go, because why don't we go? How many people listening right now have paid month after month for gym membership and you never step foot in there? I mean, I've done that for years before, and there's obviously something stopping me. I don't think it's self.
Yeah. Yeah. What I
So,
think about, even that's a great example. And I think we really could substitute anything in there, right? We could substitute parenting, or being a more loving partner, or
mhm.
being more accepting partner, or being a more compassionate parent, or whatever it is. We really, so I love this about your book. It covers everything, because it's like, this is the way we want to live life, whatever our goals are, which I'm putting in quotes. It's really about a way of being, and way of being with our systems, and being with our people.
Mhm. And I think one theme that goes across chapters is that the relationships with other people in these areas of our lives tend to go smoother when we practice being with our parts and leading from self as much as possible, or speaking for our parts, or when we don't, we do repairs, all of the things that are talked about in the book, that we start to realize things just get a little smoother. It's a little easier to work with people in these different areas. Um, so I think, to me, that's really important to like almost to let our parts know, like, life gets better, life gets easier, I have less conflict, um, those types of things.
Yeah, I love that. What about living life with a non-shaming approach?
Mm. Um, well, that idea for me came out with a lot of my parenting work, about how much I realized, all the corrections we give tend to be shaming.
Mm,
Like, even to say, it'd be really better if while you're doing your homework, if you didn't have so many devices on and you really focused and had time to concentrate. Even something like spoken so well and like developmentally appropriate with a kind voice, if we really strip it down, it's saying, I'm not pleased with how you're
mm,
doing this, and how you're doing this isn't right, and you should be different, which means you're not good enough. And the same thing goes with how we talk to our partners, how we're talking to our coworkers, our employees. Like, how if I'm a leader in an organization, I might think, just like a parent, I have the power to just tell people what to do and how to do it. And if I observe what I'm saying, it's good to kind of tease out, when am I shaming, when am I not shaming. And sometimes it's like micro shaming, where it's like, it'd be really great if you could, like, start to do
I
that.
like
So I
the
think,
sarcastic humor shaming. That's my favorite shaming. Just sarcastic humor.
right. So I think, like, we know, I PA'd for the shame, anxiety, depression one, level 2, and I was really opened my eyes to things about shame that I really didn't know, or didn't really sense in myself, about how painful it is to feel shame. And our protector parts are so quick to block anything that's going to let us feel like we're essentially a bad person. And so, as people communicate with us, or as we communicate with others, if we're leading from parts that really believe this person needs to be different for me to be happy with them, there's really no way to, in my mind, to say, we're not saying you're not good enough.
Yeah, I
So we
love
are,
that.
we're like,
Like,
we're inviting people to react to us from their parts. We're like saying, please come after me.
right, because like, how else am I supposed to take Seth if you say to me, there is something wrong with the way you're being with me. You need to be different. Like, with like something, like, you need to be different with me. Like,
Right.
there's like, how else am I mean, I guess I could be like, okay, I could be open to some feedback, but
Right.
probably that's not going to be my first
Right.
reaction.
Exactly. But if I said to you, hey, I just want to let you know, the way you're talking to me right now, I have parts that are getting really activated and I just need to slow this down because I just need to be with my parts. And, I'm really hearing that they're getting defensive right now. And I'm just wondering if we could pause. That's very different than saying you need to chill or you need to change your tone or I don't like how you're talking to me right now.
Completely different feeling, right? Sort of the feeling I get of
Right.
just being with you right now, even though sort of we're just joking, but like the feeling I get is completely different from you saying one than the other.
Right. And my hunch is that because the other one there's like shaming baked in. Like you're not doing it right. You're not good enough. You're too much. You're too little. You're too quiet. You're too loud. And I think our parts hear it as I'm not lovable for you unless I become this other thing. Like I'm
That's
not
good.
worthy of your love unless I'm different.
Mhm.
Which means I'm essentially bad.
Which is
Even though
that
that's not the
shame.
intended,
Right. Right.
but it's shaming.
Right.
That's how
Yeah.
I'm putting it together.
Yeah, I think that sounds totally right, right? That the message I'm going to get, which is probably a message. So I think we're all going to be a little bit different in it, but it's like whatever the message that my exiles really hold is like, there's something wrong with me. I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy. And then having you then point that out and then sort of show it to me is that kind of that shame. It's like you're bad and everybody knows it and I
Right.
see it. And having our shame, our badness seen or our badness witnessed. And so, yeah, that's the message that I could receive if you were like, hey, I don't like it when you do blah blah blah.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah, I mean, because it could be sweet. I mean, it could be sweet from you think you're being sweet. This is
Right.
me. I'm like, I think I'm being sweet.
Right. And one thing I could say is like, in some ways, it frees me up to be like, oh, this, I don't know how to say it. Like, it's not as hard as I thought. Like, if I say to you, I don't like how you're talking to me, and you have a big reaction. If I could pause for a moment and just go, wait a minute, who just said that? Because whenever there's a big reaction coming back to me, I want to check to see. For me, that's one of I call the litmus tests of self. Like, how are people reacting to me? Not just am I courageous, am I compassionate, curious? Do I have an agenda? But I've learned this whole other piece of like, how are people responding? If people are responding to me in a way it's not in line with what I thought the response I would get, let me just check. And 99% of the time, I find, wow, that was a part of me who really felt he was right. That really felt justified, that had energy behind it, that really wanted something for me and wants this person to stop hurting me. So it's like essentially it's saying to the other person, stop that behavior. And no matter how nice it says it, the message is stop that behavior. And so I can say to that part, are you willing to give me a shot? Are you willing to let me do this? And I could say, hey, I just want to let you know. You might even say, I know you don't intend it, or I know you're having a hard day and I know your parts are upset too. I just want you to know that I have a part that gets really hurt when you say it that way. And maybe I just need to be with this part. I'm not really sure what to do next, but I just want you to know this is happening. Now, if I said that to you, what would happen?
Yeah, I'd instantly do a little U-turn, right? I would feel soft towards you. I'd feel soft towards you, and I do a little U-turn to sort of like, okay, what's happening in my system? There would be less blame and anger at you, and more like, oh, like, okay, what's happening for me? Oh, Seth is looking at what's happening for him. That gives me an opportunity to like an invitation to see what's happening for me.
Yeah.
And my first instinct of sort of blame and shame and anger would or be super nice, sarcastically nice.
Right.
Those are my instincts. I think that would drop pretty quickly,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. And I try to offer some like rituals for that, like in the intimate relationships chapter. like how to sit with your partner and do those kind of conversations, like um, Tony Irvine Blank calls them courageous communication. When we can be with our parts and speak for them. So I try to give people exercises to get to know their parts and to like try some of these things just like we did, and
I
just to
love
see
it.
how it works.
I love it. So it's a intro to IFS, but it's also practical. It also covers lots of different topics. It'll help people in between session, which I hear that all the time, right? Do a piece of work, and then what do I do now? I'm not going to see you for a week or 2 weeks.
Right.
And so I think there needs to be more stuff like this out in the world.
Yeah. And I have to say, I haven't said it out loud here, that I'm so honored that Susan McConnell wrote the foreword. And it was just like such a touching piece that she wrote. A lot about our interactions together, just by me asking and what that was like and how she decided to. And she talks about me, like how she knows me a little bit, and also what it means for her to be self-led in the world and how important it is, especially during these times. And so I'm just kind of in disbelief that she agreed to do it. And yeah.
It's funny, what comes up for me is I don't understand why you're in disbelief. Like there's a part of me that's like, you must not see who you are in the world if that feels like a
Yeah,
disbelief that she would do
I
that.
think I do have parts that still have a hard time really like taking that in. I think I can hear them say like, if you do, you're just going to turn into like a jerk or something like
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so forget that. Forget I just said that.
that.
I want you to stay you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, go ahead.
No, I can go on, but go ahead.
So is there anything else you want to share with about the book or about you that you
Mm.
think people need to know, want to know, or that you want to share?
Um, well, about the book, I'll say I originally wrote it so you could just read maybe some of the intro and just pick a chapter. And then the feedback from my readers was that it really helps to read the book front to cover, because without trying to, I kind of built on concepts between the chapters. And sometimes I might offer something in the work chapter that's really a key piece to IFS that I didn't mention in the other chapters and things like that. And I really feel great about, the spirituality chapter around like who's here, who's praying, who's doing the ritual, what does it mean to truly connect, what is self energy, what is it, and I shared, things that I've experienced. And to have Mitchie Rose, when she read the book and she provided feedback and she wrote a little comment, for the beginning. But for her, she said, I just want to focus on the spirituality chapter and say how much I loved it, and, offered some questions and some things like that. And for her to say that for me, because she is someone who's been a teacher of mine. We have a Michigan retreat, and she would come and do a presentation on Sundays for a few hours. And I did that for a number of years. And for me, I see her as one of the founding mothers of IFS, and just like a huge influence on my practice. And to get her, I have parts for this. I just want Mitchie's stamp of approval. Boom. I just want Dick's approval. Boom. I just want Susan's approval. Boom. So like for those parts who just really just wanted them to say yes, like I don't need to hear anything else, just yes. That's what those parts wanted. So
Yeah.
all
So
of
how are
that,
those parts doing now? They all said yes. How are
yeah,
they doing now?
really happy that they did. And I think they also hope other people say yes too. They want the readers to say yes. But I know from being an English major that once the book is in your hands, it's yours. Like I don't get to control what the message is anymore. So as people read the book, they get to be in relationship with it, and it becomes their own piece, and it becomes what they, what they learn, and how they interact with it is really up to them. But I hope it's a positive experience, and um, sharing lots of examples from my life, from client experiences. We do some of that, and
Yeah, well, I am
hopefully,
excited. So the book is going to be available on Amazon. Do you have an idea of when it's available? When it's going to be out there?
I'm hoping by the end of November, I'm gonna give it to Amazon. But I don't know how long it's gonna take for them to process. It might take a few weeks.
Okay.
So I'm
Okay.
hoping no later than January.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Um,
but I'm also using separate printers to get it to my house. So I will have copies. And if people go to my website, there's a self-led link at sethkopald.com. And you could actually right now say I'm interested when it comes in and I'll email you. But once I have hard copies in my hand, then I might sell them from my house. And if people want me to sign it or something like that, I'd be happy to. And
Perfect. Perfect. So that's what you want to do then. You want to go to Seth's website, click the I'm interested in this self-led book, get on that list so that you can get hard copies. And Seth, I would love a picture of all the books that you have on your kitchen table and your handwriting and going to the post office 1,000 times. So I am so excited for you. I'm excited for us. I cannot wait to get this book. I think it's going to be just a huge contribution for the community.
yeah, thank you very much. I always love being on your show.
Good. So I didn't tell everybody, we didn't say where you are in the world because you've been here a couple of times. So tell everybody where you are in the world and what you would see if you look out your nearest window.
Okay. Well, I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And today it's a sunny day. And I live in a kind of a cute little 1950s neighborhood with like small little Cape Cod houses with small lots. And if you looked out my front window, you'd see the whole front yard I've transferred into gardens because I'm trying to get rid of all the grass and have gardens and a place for pollinators to thrive.
Great.
Yeah,
That's great. Well, how cold is it there?
actually this week it's getting into the 50s, but it drops into the 30s at night and
Okay.
winter is knocking. Usually Thanksgiving, we're done. We're into winter. So
Yeah, same here. So we're recording this in November, right before Thanksgiving, and it is. I think today is 50 and sunny. We had a little bit of snow the other day, but yeah, it's coming. We're getting ready.
yeah.
And Seth, if you were not doing all that you're doing in the world and you had to do something different, what would you do?
Well, I do have a huge passion for woodworking now, like traditional woodworking. So using hand tools, a lot of the hand tools that could be almost 100 years old.
Wow.
I love being creative and creating things with my hands and having that relationship between the mind and the hands and the spirit and the hands. So I probably, if I could like snap my fingers, have a dream come true outside of IFS, I would be creating probably all different kinds of art and like traveling around doing art shows and art fairs and feeling free and talking to people and enjoying life. And
Sounds good.
that'd be a great retirement for me.
Yeah, I think it's a great retirement plan.
We might do it and do like IFS like Zoom sessions on the side,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
It's doable. Well, Seth, thank you so much. It's good to see you, and we'll talk soon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, like, all the things. My book is available at your favorite independent bookstore or all the places books are available. You can also visit my website, tammysalenberger.com, where you can download a free meditation on getting to know your should parts. You know, there's parts of you who remind you of what you should be doing. They sound a bit critical at times. Yes, we all have them. You can follow me at IFS Tammy on Instagram and Twitter and the One Inside Facebook page. I'm so grateful for Jack Reardon, who created the new music. Jack is a graduate of Derek Scott's IFS Stepping Stone program. Thanks, Jack, for getting me. And to you, thanks for listening.